Well, greetings. It's my pleasure to be with you for the second theme talk in our series, and this one is on awareness. Now, awareness, you could argue, is probably the most important theme, because particularly when we're talking about transformation, and these themes are the themes of transformation, if transformation is going to happen, if anything's going to change from one way of being to another, and we're going to have a part to play in that, then one of the key elements, of course, is awareness. So awareness is a very important theme, and it has been said that you can't get from A to B unless you know where you are. So you need to know where you are, be aware. And also anything that you are aware of, you can change. But if you're not aware of it, you can't. So that's a fairly simplistic view of awareness, but it's an important one nonetheless. We're going to look at a little more complexity around the area of awareness. And to do this, I'd like to divide it into a couple of pieces. First of all, there's the distinction between inner awareness and outer awareness. And most of the time, we're glued to the external. We focus externally. Many of us don't really ever take the time to stop and feel and be with what's really going on the inside. And quite often the two are connected, but sometimes we don't connect the dots, and the focus is purely external. And so we go about trying to change things externally. Now, one of the important pieces of wisdom, and you've probably heard this before from things like the Serenity Prayer, is it's important to be able to change the things you can and leave alone the things that you can't, or accept that there are things that you can't change. And this is true, and it's also to some extent true for ourselves. However, as human beings, we are always changing anyway. So if we're always in change and we're always moving from one way of being to another, if we have some agency over that, and if we set up the conditions, the right conditions, we're like the way in which a flower grows in a garden. It will grow beautifully if it has the right conditions, or it will wilt and die if it doesn't have the right conditions. And so one of the things we can be aware of, and very, very important in the transformational work that we do, is being aware of those conditions that support a flourishing garden, or a flourishing life, if you want to put it that way. What are the things that are in place in my life that lead to my human flourishing? And some of those things are external, but many of them are internal. Particularly how I'm choosing to be with myself, particularly how I choose to take care of myself, particularly how I choose to engage or not engage in contemplative practices, for example. So what are those conditions, and being aware of them is very helpful. But then when we get into awareness and feeling out, focusing on being more aware, one of the things that we're going to be needing to shift our attention to is inner awareness, because that's more significant in the transformational process than what's going on outside and around us. In fact, the inner awareness can determine how we choose to be with what's going on outside if we're in touch with it. Let me give you a quick example of this. And there's also a distinction between what's really going on in awareness and what we believe to be going on. And sometimes they don't match up. Let's suppose you're working on a very important project with part of your work, and you've been working at it for some time, and you suddenly realize you've made a terrible mistake. And this terrible mistake means you're going to have to backtrack, and it's going to take many, many more hours to go back and completely go over some parts of the project that you thought you were sailing along merrily with, and now find that you're not. And you discover that there's an awareness that, oh my goodness, I've made a mistake. And if you just focus on the external, you may not even be aware that there's an inner turmoil going on at the same time, although you will be called to act. So you'll be running around in a little bit of a flurry. You'll be trying to do things and fix things and not quite sure what to do. Let's say you tune in, you take the time to tune in and get the inner awareness as well. And the inner awareness, there's a knot in the pit of your stomach. And when you sit with that knot and you feel it and you get a felt sense of what's really going on in your body, you have an awareness of fear. There's a fear there in the pit of your stomach. You get a little more curious about that fear, and you get a sense that the fear is being driven by a fear of losing your job. This is an important project, and if your boss comes along and finds out you've made this terrible mistake, oh my goodness, you may lose your job. Now that may not happen, but it may happen, and you know that the fear is coming from that place. Well, once you've got that and you're aware of that, you've got that inner awareness, you can sit with that fear. And once you sit with it for a while and really get to know it, maybe it will dissipate by itself, but maybe you can also be more skillful in deciding how to be with that fear as you go about trying to correct whatever mistake it was that you made. Or maybe even how to skillfully talk to your boss about what happened. But to do that well, you need to be in touch with the fear as well, the inner awareness. So the inner awareness is very, very important. So there's also the filters we put on awareness. So there's filtered awareness and unfiltered awareness. And in that case that I just gave you, all that's really happened, the unfiltered version of awareness, is all that's really happened is you've made a mistake. All the rest of it is created. That's coming from the filters that are in place for you. Your relationship with your boss in the past, perhaps, your sense of yourself, your insecurity or doubts about your capacity to work in this particular job. All of those things start to play in there, and that's where the filters come from. So being aware of the filters is also important. How do we filter our awareness? And the classic example of this one is, imagine you're driving along on a freeway somewhere out in the Midwest, and all of a sudden, and you went to University of Michigan, right? And you're true blue, you're a Michigan person. And all of a sudden, this car weaves along the freeway, weaving in and out of the traffic, and races past and cuts in front of you, and you notice on the back of the car an Ohio State bumper sticker. Oh my goodness. Now, I don't know if you know much about college football, but Michigan, University of Michigan and Ohio State, kind of good rivalry going on there. And a lot of opinions about each other's school and people and whatever. So your immediate response is, that idiot, driving like that, reckless, dangerous, da-da-da-da-da, right? Same situation, same thing happens. Car weaving along the freeway, in and out of traffic, comes in front of you and cuts in front of you. You look and you see University of Michigan bumper sticker. That person must be really having a bad day, and they're really in a hurry to get somewhere. I hope it looks like they're driving pretty well, so I hope they keep driving carefully and don't come to grief. There we go. Different filter, different response, right? So noticing our filters and noticing the response, being aware of that as well, very, very important. Now, one of the things that as I said, we're very good at awareness and reaction to awareness. So one of the things we need to do is sit with awareness once it comes. The usual way of dealing with it is we're aware of something, we want to fix something. Now, if you think about this, you think about the last time you made a New Year's resolution. You got this awareness that, oh my goodness, I got to shed some weight. So you're going to take off 10 pounds by the end of February, and it's January 2nd, right? And so you're going to go on this crash diet and da-da-da-da-da. Well, January 15th rolls around, and by that time the diet's kind of blown, and maybe the resolution's sort of drifting into the past, and nothing much has changed, right? That's actually how most New Year's resolutions end up. I think it's around, don't know the exact number, but it's around 70, 80%. There's probably only about 7%, I believe, that actually come to some fruition over a period of time. So that way of making change happen, that way of transforming something, it's not very transformative, right? It doesn't really shift much. When we come at change from this mind-oriented, deliberate focus, and particularly when we come from a negative, something's wrong and I've got to fix it. So we're going to do something to fix it. That kind of change is not transformative and doesn't usually last. Transformative change, on the other hand, is when we're aware of something, we sit in the awareness of it, and through just being with whatever's there, it shifts, and we perhaps inhabit a different state of being. And in that different state of being, particularly through things like contemplative practice, the meditation component and the dropping in component of the Phoenix Rising 6-phase approach, when we're in that deeper place of knowing, things don't quite have the same impact. They're seen in a different context. They're felt in a different context. It's not the end of the world. These things arise and these things pass, and it's part of life. And we see things more and we experience things more holistically. And things don't throw us around like they do when we're in reactivity mode, right? So, very, very important to recognize the difference between the transformational process and the usual figure it out with my head and make something happen kind of change, right? And in fact, that takes me into the last thing I want to talk about, and that is the awareness trap. We can get into an awareness trap. We start to get these awarenesses, and all of a sudden, with all of these awarenesses coming, we want to do all these things, and we start making all these action plans to try and fix and change things, right? And particularly where we're drawn out of awareness and we start talking about it, because we always want to share the excitement. Oh wow, I've just got this awareness, da 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 da, and this is how that connects, and this connects, and da 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 da. And so we get all excited about it, right? But as soon as we do that, we're out of our body, we're out of being present to what is, and we're into our head, and we're trying to fix things, right? And oftentimes that takes us along a very slow and painful path to change. Whereas the more easy and skillful way is to be with, to soak in the awareness, to let it be there, to embrace it. The next theme we're going to talk about acceptance, and that's where we get more into this whole idea of embracing what arises and being with it and just allowing it and letting it be. And this is particularly helpful when we're getting our awareness through the body, as we are in this approach, the Phoenix Rising approach. And I didn't mention that at the beginning, but probably is a good time to now. We use the body as the primary vehicle for awareness. Why? Because the body's a much truer instrument than our thinking mind. First of all, the body is always in the present. It's here. It experiences what's happening right here, right now. It's here. It's not in the past or the future. It's only here that takes us into the past or future, or puts those filters on awareness. So the idea is to steep in awareness in the present, in the body, and just simply be with it, without the need to fix, change, adjust, or make anything happen. We'll talk more about that when we talk about acceptance. So for now, have fun with awareness. Use your way of tuning in to be aware, as well as noticing what's around you, but that's peripheral. The real work in awareness is the inner awareness. What's here now? What's happening right now? Feelings, sensations, images, thoughts, what's going on? And then allowing, just letting it be there. We'll talk more about that. So, have a great time. Be aware. Thank you.